"Happy anniversary to us," I whispered, raising my champagne glass as Ethan leaned in for a toast. That's when I saw her, Natalie, striding through La Luna's private dining room, clutching a manila envelope to her chest, her eyes locked on my husband. In that moment, with the crystal chandeliers casting a romantic glow across our table for two, I knew my 10-year marriage was about to shatter. Before Ethan could clink his glass against mine, Natalie reached our table, her perfectly manicured hand trembling slightly as she placed the envelope beside our anniversary cake. "I thought your wife should know," she said, her voice surprisingly steady for someone demolishing a marriage. "Open it, Olivia." The weight of the envelope felt impossibly heavy as I lifted it. Inside were ultrasound photos, the black and white, image of a 20-week fetus unmistakable, with Natalie's name clearly printed at the top. But it was the handwritten note that truly gutted me. "Ethan can't wait to be a daddy. We've already picked out names." The champagne flute slipped from my fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor in perfect synchronicity with my heart. Marco, the restaurant owner, rushed over at the commotion, but froze when he registered the scene unfolding in his carefully curated romantic space. I looked from the ultrasound to Ethan's face, searching for denial, for outrage, for anything that would tell me this was some cruel joke. But all I found was guilt washing across his features, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "Olivia, I can explain," he started. But the words felt hollow, rehearsed even, as though he'd been practicing this moment in the mirror for weeks. How long had he been preparing to tell me? Was he planning to do it tonight, on our anniversary? Or was Natalie's appearance as much a shock to him as it was to me? If you're joining us for the first time, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Tomorrow's video reveals what I discovered in our home after this nightmare began, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. The signs had been there for months, though I'd expertly ignored them all. The late nights at Westfield Financial Partners that had become increasingly frequent. The way Ethan angled his phone away when text messages arrived, his sudden interest in his appearance, new clothes, a gym membership, cologne I hadn't selected, classic warning signs I'd dismissed as the natural evolution of a busy professional's life. Marco discreetly guided us to a private room in the back of La Luna, away from the curious stares of other diners who had witnessed Natalie's dramatic entrance. I sat rigidly in a leather armchair, the ultrasound photos spread across the antique coffee table before me, while Ethan paced nervously. Natalie had been asked to wait outside, but I could see her through the frosted glass, her silhouette a constant reminder of my new reality. "She's my executive assistant," Ethan finally said, breaking the suffocating silence. "It started 6 months ago during the Denver conference. 6 months, half a year of lies. The Denver conference had been in April, when I'd been busy with the Riverside Design Group's biggest project to date, a complete overhaul of the West Side Hotel. I'd been so proud of securing that contract, so consumed with proving myself. While I was building my career, Ethan had been building a second life. I never meant for this to happen," he continued, the platitude so predictable it almost made me laugh. "We were going to end it. But then she found out about the baby and things got complicated." Complicated. Such a benign word for the detonation of a decade-long marriage. I stared at the ultrasound again, at the tiny profile that looked so much like the children Ethan and I had once planned to have before his ambition and my fertility issues had postponed those dreams indefinitely. "How far along is she?" I asked, my voice sounding strangely detached, as though it belonged to someone else. 20 weeks, he admitted. "We found out at 12 weeks, but I didn't know how to tell you." Yet he'd told someone. The realization hit me with stunning clarity. Someone else knew before me. Does Richard know? Richard Coleman was Ethan's boss at Westfield, a man who had dined in our home, whose wife had become a client of my design firm. Ethan's hesitation was answer enough. He's been supportive. Of course he had. the boys' club protecting its own. How many others at me? Westfield knew? How many pitying glances had been cast my way at company functions while I'd smiled obliviously? I gathered the ultrasound photos, slipping them back into the envelope with mechanical precision. "I'm going to Rebecca's," I said, referring to my best friend who lived downtown. "Don't follow me, don't call me, I need to think." Outside, I walked past Natalie without acknowledgement, though I felt her eyes following me. In my car, the weight of the evening finally crashed over me, and I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, fighting back the scream, building in my throat. I wouldn't break down in the La Luna parking lot, giving Riverside's gossip mill more to feast on. Rebecca answered her door in pajamas, one look at my face telling her everything she needed to know. "What did he do?" she asked, pulling me inside her modern apartment with its panoramic view of the city lights. Lights that now seemed to be swimming as tears finally spilled down my cheeks. I told her everything, the words pouring out between sobs. Rebecca, ever the pragmatist, poured us both generous glasses of wine and listened without interruption until I'd exhausted my immediate grief. "You need to call Andrew Bennett first thing tomorrow," she said firmly, referencing the divorce attorney who had helped her navigate her own divorce 3 years earlier. "And you need to secure your finances before Ethan can hide anything." The practical advice anchored me, giving shape to the formless horror of my new reality. Rebecca was right. I couldn't afford the luxury of emotional paralysis, not when there was so much at stake. "Use my guest room tonight," Rebecca offered. "Tomorrow we start planning. You're not just going to survive this, Olivia. You're going to come out stronger." I barely slept that night, my mind racing through a decade of memories, searching for all the moments I might have misinterpreted, all the lies I'd unwittingly believed. By dawn, grief had hardened into something more useful: determination. Rebecca was already awake when I emerged from the guest room, her laptop open to Andrew Bennett's law firm website. "I've texted Jason Thompson, too," she said, referring to her brother-in-law, a financial advisor known for his discretion. "He can meet us at Morning Brew at 10. The coffee shop was busy when we arrived, but Jason had secured a corner table away from the morning rush. At 45, with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, he had the reassuring presence of someone who had seen it all and judged none of it. "Before we discuss anything else," he said after I'd recounted the previous night's events, "we need to document your current financial situation. Joint accounts, investments, retirement funds, property, everything." I'd brought my laptop, and together we pulled up account statements, property records, and investment portfolios. What emerged painted a concerning picture. 3 large withdrawals from our joint savings account over the past 4 months, totaling nearly $50,000. A home equity line of credit I hadn't been aware of. Investment accounts showing unusual activity. "He's been preparing," Jason observed, his expression grim. "These patterns suggest someone getting ready to separate finances or possibly move assets where they'll be harder to track." The betrayal deepened with each discovery. Not just an affair, not just a secret pregnancy, but financial deception as well. How thoroughly Ethan had shattered the trust between us. "What do I do?" I asked, feeling overwhelmed by the scope of what I was facing. "First, secure what you can without alerting him," Jason advised. "Open individual accounts at a different bank. Document everything. I can help you track the money trail on these withdrawals, but Andrew will need to subpoena certain records." By the time we left Morning Brew, I had a plan. A temporary account at Riverside National Bank. Copies of all financial statements safely stored in the cloud. A meeting with Andrew Bennett scheduled for 3 o'clock. When my phone rang as we were leaving the bank, I expected it to be Ethan. Instead, Emma's name flashed on the screen, my sister calling from Seattle. "Olivia, what's going on?" she demanded without preamble. "Ethan just called looking for you, saying you'd had a misunderstanding and he's worried." A misunderstanding. The audacity of that characterization made my blood boil. Did he mention that the misunderstanding involved his pregnant mistress crashing our anniversary dinner? I asked, my voice sharper than I'd intended. Emma's shocked silence was followed by a stream of creative profanity. "I'm booking a flight right now," she finally said. "You shouldn't be alone." "I'm not alone," I assured her, glancing at Rebecca beside me. "But I could use my big sister." Andrew Bennett's office in downtown Riverside occupied the third floor of a restored Victorian, all dark wood and leather that spoke of tradition and stability. The attorney himself defied the conservative setting, younger than I expected, with a reputation for innovative legal strategies that had earned him both admirers and detractors in Riverside's legal community. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Financial infidelity often accompanies the other kind," he observed after reviewing the documents Jason had helped me compile. "The good news is that we can use this to your advantage. The unauthorized equity line, the unexplained withdrawals, these create a paper trail of deception that most judges take very seriously." If you found this story compelling, don't forget to hit subscribe and join our community. Your support helps us continue sharing these real-life experiences that remind us all we're never truly alone in our struggles. I left the office with a folder of paperwork, Rebecca beside me offering silent support as we navigated the afternoon traffic. My mind was spinning with Andrew's advice. Secure important documents, change passwords, document everything. The coming days would require strategy and composure when all I wanted was to scream at the heavens. "We should go to your house while Ethan's still at work," Rebecca suggested, checking her watch. "Get your essential items, important documents. You can stay with me as long as you need." The thought of returning to the home Ethan and I had shared for 7 years, the craftsman-style house in Oakwood that we'd painstakingly renovated together, made my chest tighten. But Rebecca was right. I needed clothes, my laptop, the external hard drive where I kept my design portfolios, and the fireproof box in our closet that contained birth certificates, marriage license, and other irreplaceable documents. Our street looked achingly normal as we pulled into the driveway, Mrs. Peterson watering her immaculate garden next door, children riding bikes further down the block. How strange that the world continued unchanged while mine had imploded. I hesitated before using my key, half expecting the locks to be changed already, but the door opened to the familiar scent of the lavender candles I always kept burning in the entryway. The house was silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the living room, a wedding gift from Ethan's parents. "I'll start in the office," Rebecca said, already moving toward the converted sunroom where we kept our financial documents. "You get what you need from upstairs." I moved through our bedroom like a ghost, pulling clothes from hangers and drawers without much thought to what I was selecting. In the bathroom, I grabbed my toiletries, pausing when I caught sight of Ethan's electric razor beside the sink. How many mornings had I watched him shave, chatting about our plans for the day? How many evenings had we brushed our teeth side by side, exchanging glances in the mirror? The mundane intimacies of marriage that I'd taken for granted. The fireproof box was where it had always been, on the top shelf of our walk-in closet. As I reached for it, my fingers brushed against something unfamiliar, a shopping bag pushed to the back of the shelf. Curiosity overrode my mission, and I pulled it down, finding a small jewelry box inside. For a moment, wild hope flared. Had Ethan purchased an anniversary gift after all? Was there some explanation for all of this that I hadn't considered? But the receipt tucked into the bag doused that flame instantly. The necklace had been purchased 3 weeks ago, but our anniversary had been yesterday, and the sales slip clearly indicated the item had been gift-wrapped with a card addressed to Natalie. I replaced the bag exactly as I'd found it, the discovery hardening my resolve. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment on Ethan's part. This was a calculated double life. Downstairs, I found Rebecca in the office, her expression troubled as she examined the screen of Ethan's desktop computer. "What is it?" I asked, setting down the suitcase I'd hastily packed. "I think you need to see this," she said, angling the monitor toward me. Ethan had left his email open, careless for someone usually so meticulous about security. The message displayed was from a realtor in Clearwater Beach, Florida, confirming an appointment to view waterfront properties next month. The email thread below showed previous correspondence spanning weeks, with references to fresh starts and perfect timing once everything is finalized. "He's planning to move to Florida," I whispered, the pieces clicking into place. "The unexplained withdrawals, the equity line. He'd been gathering funds for a down payment." "With her." Rebecca squeezed my shoulder. "Keep scrolling." Further down the email chain, the realtor had asked about school districts for the little one on the way, and Ethan had responded enthusiastically about wanting the best environment for our new family. Our new family. The words branded themselves into my consciousness. While I'd been planning our anniversary dinner, Ethan had been planning his escape to build a new life with Natalie and their child. "We need to document all of this," Rebecca said, her tone practical despite the bomb we'd just uncovered. "Take screenshots. Forward the emails to yourself." As we worked, the sound of a car in the driveway sent adrenaline coursing through me. A glance at the clock confirmed it was too early for Ethan to be home from work. Through the office window, I saw Richard Coleman's luxury sedan parking behind my car. "It's Ethan's boss," I told Rebecca, quickly closing the email and shutting down the computer. "What is he doing here?" Richard looked surprised to see me when I opened the door, his usual confident demeanor faltering momentarily. "Olivia, I wasn't expecting you to be home." "Clearly," I replied, making no move to invite him inside. "What can I help you with, Richard?" He regained his composure quickly, straightening the lapels of his bespoke suit. "I was hoping to speak with Ethan. He left work early today, seemed quite distressed. I thought he might have come home." The concern seemed genuine, but it was overshadowed by what I now knew. Richard had been aware of Ethan's affair, had been supportive while I remained in the dark. How many times had Richard and his wife Christine dined at our table while he knew Ethan was betraying me? "Ethan isn't here," I said coolly. "And since we're being honest with each other, I know you've been aware of his relationship with Natalie. What I'd like to know is how many others at Westfield have been laughing behind my back." Richard at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. "No one has been laughing, Olivia. It's a difficult situation for everyone involved. Especially for the wife who found out from the mistress herself," I retorted, in the middle of her anniversary dinner. Behind me, Rebecca appeared in the hallway, her presence a silent support. Richard glanced between us, clearly calculating how to salvage the conversation. "Perhaps we could speak privately," he suggested. "There are aspects to this situation that might be relevant to your interests." Something in his tone made me pause. "Rebecca is staying. Anything you have to say can be said in front of her." Richard sighed but nodded, lowering his voice despite my assurance. "Ethan came to me months ago about his predicament. He was seeking my advice not just as his boss, but as someone who's navigated similar waters." The implication was clear, and I felt a surge of sympathy for Richard's wife. How many marriages in Ethan's prestigious firm were built on such betrayals? "What exactly are you trying to tell me?" I pressed. "Ethan has been positioning himself for a significant promotion, a new division we're opening in Florida. The position comes with substantial stock options, profit sharing, executive benefits, all of which would be considered in any settlement discussions." The calculated nature of the information exchange wasn't lost on me. Richard wasn't here, out of concern for Ethan's well-being. He was damage control, assessing how much I knew and how it might impact Westfield. "I appreciate the information," I said, my tone making it clear I didn't appreciate his motive. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we were just leaving." As we finished, gathering my belongings, Rebecca's phone chimed with a text. "It's Emma," she said. "Her flight lands at 7. I'll pick her up while you get settled at my place." Having my sister flying in from Seattle felt like calling in reinforcements. Emma had always been my fiercest defender, from playground bullies to my first heartbreak in college. This situation would bring out her most protective instincts. We were loading the last of my suitcases into Rebecca's car when Natalie's sleek BMW pulled up to the curb. My entire body tensed as she emerged, looking far more composed than she had at the restaurant. Gone was the emotional mistress making a scene. This Natalie moved with purpose, one hand resting protectively on her visible baby bump. "Olivia," she called, approaching with an expression that seemed almost sympathetic. "Can we talk?" Rebecca stepped forward, physically positioning herself between us. "This isn't the time or place." Natalie ignored her, keeping her eyes fixed on me. "There are things you should know, things Ethan probably won't tell you." Curiosity warred with self-preservation. What could she possibly say that would matter? Now? Yet something in her tone suggested this wasn't a confrontation but a warning. 5 minutes, I conceded, ignoring Rebecca's concerned glance. "That's all you get." We moved to the front porch for a semblance of privacy while Rebecca waited by the car, watching vigilantly. Natalie perched on the porch swing Ethan, and I had installed our first summer in the house, the absurdity of the situation not lost on me. "First, I want you to know that Ethan told me he was separated when we met," she began, twisting an emerald ring on her right hand. "Not her left," I noted. "That changed about 2 months in, when I saw your anniversary photo on his desk. By then," she gestured to her stomach. "By then you were already pregnant," I finished for her. She nodded. I considered ending it, the pregnancy, not just the relationship, but Ethan was persuasive, said he'd been planning to leave anyway, that the baby was a sign. I thought of the emails to the Florida realtor, the carefully hidden jewelry, the financial maneuvers. "He's been planning your new life together quite thoroughly." "Our new life, yes, but at your expense." Natalie reached into her purse, removing a flash drive. "Last week, I was helping Ethan organize files for the Florida division when I found these. Financial projections for Westfield's expansion, but also documentation of some questionable accounting practices." I made no move to take the drive. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because yesterday, after we confirmed the pregnancy was a boy, Ethan mentioned a trust fund he's establishing. Money he described as coming from creative bookkeeping that couldn't be traced. Then he laughed about how he'd structured the prenup. You signed to minimize what you'd receive in a divorce." Her expression hardened. I realized then that a man who would systematically deceive his wife of 10 years would have no qualms deceiving anyone, including the mother of his child. The flash drive lay between us on the porch swing, a modern Pandora's box containing either salvation or further heartbreak. "I was raised by a single mother who got nothing in her divorce because my father hid all the assets," Natalie continued. "I won't let history repeat itself, not for me and not for you. Whatever you think of me, we both deserve better than being manipulated by Ethan Mitchell." She stood to leave, adjusting her designer handbag on her shoulder. "One more thing. Richard Coleman isn't just Ethan's mentor in business. The Florida division? It's a cover for moving certain investments offshore. They're partners in whatever scheme they're running." As her BMW pulled away, Rebecca joined me on the porch, eyeing the flash drive with suspicion. "Can we trust anything from her?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but Andrew Bennett and Jason Thompson will want to see this." Back at Rebecca's apartment, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop with trepidation. What we found exceeded Natalie's warnings. spreadsheets documenting systematic financial manipulation, emails between Ethan and Richard discussing creative solutions for high-net-worth clients, and most damning of all, documentation of how they plan to shield assets not just from government oversight, but from personal liabilities, including spousal claims. I'd been married to a man I never truly knew. While I'd built my design business on transparency and integrity, Ethan had been constructing an elaborate house of cards based on deception. The prenup he'd insisted was just formality had been the first piece of his protection strategy. As the scope of his betrayal came into focus, I felt a surprising emotion emerging through the hurt and anger. Clarity. For the first time since Natalie had walked into La Luna with those ultrasound photos, I knew exactly what I needed to do. When Emma arrived that evening, bringing her characteristic energy and righteous indignation, she found me not broken, but resolute. The three of us, sister, best friend, and betrayed wife, sat at Rebecca's dining table strategizing until dawn, the flash drive's contents projected on the wall like a roadmap to reclaiming my future. "He thinks he's so clever," Emma observed, her legal background allowing her to quickly grasp the implications of what we'd discovered. "But he's left a trail a mile wide. This isn't just divorce territory, it's potential criminal charges." "So, what's the play?" Rebecca asked, refilling our coffee cups as sunrise painted the downtown skyline in gold and pink. "Go straight to the authorities?" I shook my head, thinking of Andrew Bennett's parting advice. "Not yet. First, we gather more evidence. Then, when everything's in place, I confront Ethan on my terms. Not as a victim, but from a position of power." The path forward wouldn't be easy, but for the first time since those ultrasound photos had shattered my world, I felt something close to gratitude toward Natalie Reynolds. In trying to destroy my marriage, she had inadvertently given me the tools to ensure Ethan couldn't destroy my future. Morning light streamed through Rebecca's apartment windows as I stared at my phone, watching it light up for the 12th time with Ethan's call. I let it go to voicemail again, adding to the collection of increasingly desperate messages he'd been leaving since our anniversary dinner. His latest text read simply, "Please, Olivia, we need to talk. I can explain everything." Emma glanced over my shoulder, her expression hardening. "Explain what? How he planned to leave you with nothing while starting his new family in Florida. Delete that garbage." "Actually," I said, setting my phone down without responding, "we should save everything. Andrew said any communication could be useful." After a fitful night's sleep, we'd spent the morning organizing our approach. Emma, with her background in corporate law, had already identified several potential violations in the documents Natalie had provided. Rebecca had reached out to Jason Thompson again, who agreed to meet us at Andrew Bennett's office later that afternoon. "I should go to the design studio," I said, suddenly remembering the client meeting scheduled for today. "I have the Hendersons coming in to review concept boards at 11. Emma and Rebecca exchanged concerned glances. "Are you sure that's wise?" Rebecca asked gently. "Considering everything that's happening?" The question stung, though I knew it came from a place of love. My marriage may be collapsing, but I won't let it destroy the business I've spent years building. The Hendersons project is a major contract for Riverside Design Group. I need to be there. Emma nodded, respecting my decision. "I'll come with you. I can pretend to be interested in hiring you for my condo renovation while keeping an eye out for Ethan. He might try to corner you at work." The thought hadn't occurred to me, but Emma was right. Ethan knew my schedule, knew I rarely missed client meetings. It would be a logical place for him to try to find me if I continued avoiding his calls. At Riverside Design Group, my assistant Megan's eyes widened when I walked in with Emma. News traveled fast in our mid-sized city, and though I'd called Megan last night with a brief explanation of why I might be unavailable, her expression suggested she knew more details than I'd shared. "The Hendersons are already in the conference room," she said, handing me their file. And there's been several calls from Westfield Financial. Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Coleman both. I felt Emma stiffen beside me at the mention of Richard Coleman. Take messages, I instructed Megan. If either of them comes by, I'm unavailable. Of course, Megan replied, her tone conveying complete support. Also, these came for you this morning. She gestured to an elaborate flower arrangement on her desk. 24 red roses with a note tucked among the blooms. I didn't need to read it to know they were from Ethan, a gesture as predictable as it was insufficient. Have them donated. To the hospital oncology ward, I said, ignoring the card entirely. The patients there could use some beauty more than I need empty apologies. The meeting with the Hendersons went remarkably well, considering the emotional hurricane I was weathering internally. There was something steadying about discussing color palettes, spatial flow, and lighting concepts, concrete elements I could control in a life that had suddenly become unmoored. Karen Henderson, perceptive as ever, seemed to sense something, was off, but respected my professional demeanor without prying. You've outdone yourself, Olivia, she said as they prepared to leave, approving all my concepts for their lake house renovation. I'm so glad we waited for you personally to handle this project, despite your busy schedule. The compliment bolstered my flagging spirits. I'd built Riverside Design Group from a solo operation in my spare bedroom to one of the most sought-after design firms in the region. No matter what happened with Ethan, this accomplishment was mine alone. As Emma and I prepared to leave for our meeting with Andrew, Megan appeared in my office doorway, her expression apologetic. Natalie Reynolds is here, she said, lowering her voice. She's quite insistent about seeing you. Emma immediately moved to intervene. Tell her to take a hike. Olivia doesn't owe her a conversation. I held up my hand, considering. No, it's okay. Send her in. Emma looked at me like I'd lost my mind. After everything she's done? After everything Ethan has done, I corrected. Natalie is just a symptom of a much larger problem. Besides, the flash drive she gave me might be the key to ensuring I don't get steamrolled in the divorce. Natalie entered my office with none of the confrontational energy she'd displayed at La Luna. Today, in a conservative maternity dress and minimal makeup, she looked almost vulnerable. Though I reminded myself this could be as calculated as everything else in my life had recently. Proven to be. Thank you for seeing me, she said, declining my reflexive offer to sit. I'll be brief. Ethan knows I gave you the flash drive. The statement hung in the air between us, its implications immediately apparent. If Ethan knew about the drive, he would be moving to damage control, possibly destroying evidence or creating cover stories. How? I asked simply. Richard Coleman has monitoring software on all Westfield computers. When I accessed those files to copy them, it triggered an alert. They confronted me this morning. She touched her abdomen in an unconscious protective gesture. They tried to convince me it was all routine business, nothing improper. Said I'd misunderstood conversations that were taken out of context. Emma, who had refused to leave despite my assurances I could handle this alone, stepped forward. Did they threaten you? Natalie's expression tightened. Not explicitly, but Richard made it very clear that my position at Westfield and Ethan's depends on their discretion being respected. He also mentioned how Florida is a much more affordable place to raise a child without two stable incomes. The threat was thinly veiled but unmistakable. Retract the accusations or face consequences. Why are you telling me this? I asked, watching her carefully. You could have destroyed the evidence, backed Ethan's play, secured your future with him. Because I made a choice when I walked into that restaurant with the ultrasound photos, Natalie replied, meeting my gaze directly. I chose truth over comfort. It was cruel, and I'm not proud of how I handled it. But I won't go back to living with lies. She placed a hand on her stomach again. My son deserves better than that. So do I. So do you. After Natalie left, Emma and I headed directly to Andrew Bennett's office where Jason Thompson was already waiting. The situation had escalated from a straightforward divorce to something far more complex. If what Natalie says is true, they'll be covering their tracks as we speak, Andrew said after I recounted our conversation. We need to move quickly. Jason nodded, pulling up financial records on his tablet. I've been analyzing the documents from the flash drive. The pattern suggests systematic misrepresentation of investment returns to certain high net worth clients, with the difference being siphoned to offshore accounts. Classic Ponzi structure, but with a twist, they're targeting only a select group of investors, which has allowed it to stay under regulatory radar. And my husband is at the center of this, I said. The reality's still difficult to fully absorb. The Ethan I thought I knew, ambitious but ethical, driven but fair, was a carefully constructed illusion. Not just at the center, Jason corrected, gently. Based on these documents, he conceived the entire scheme. Richard Coleman provided the client access, but Ethan engineered the financial structure. Andrew leaned back in his chair, considering. This complicates your divorce proceeding, but potentially in your favor. Ethan will be desperate to keep this quiet. It gives us leverage. I don't want leverage, I said, surprising myself with the vehemence in my voice. I want justice, not just for me, but for everyone they've deceived. Emma squeezed my hand supportively. Which is exactly why we're going to the Securities and Exchange Commission with this information. Andrew held up a cautionary hand. Before we involve federal regulators, we need to ensure Olivia's interests are protected. Once this becomes a federal investigation, the focus will be on the financial crimes, not the divorce settlement. What do you suggest? I asked. A two-pronged approach, Andrew replied. First, we file for divorce immediately, citing adultery and financial misconduct. Simultaneously, we prepare documentation for the SEC, but hold off submitting until we've secured temporary orders freezing marital assets. Jason nodded in agreement. We'll need to move fast. Now that Ethan knows Natalie shared information, with you, he'll be liquidating whatever he can access. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a banking alert, a notification that $50,000 had been withdrawn from our joint checking account. I showed the screen to Jason, who immediately began typing on his laptop. This is exactly what I was afraid of, he said grimly. Let me check your other accounts. Within minutes, we discovered Ethan had begun a systematic liquidation of our most accessible assets, emptying checking accounts, drawing down investment accounts where he was the primary signatory, even attempting to take a cash advance against our home equity line. He's panicking, Emma observed, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. Good. People make mistakes when they panic. Andrew was already on the phone with a judge he knew, requesting an emergency hearing for temporary orders. His reputation in the Riverside legal community proved valuable. We were granted a slot for the following morning. Pack an overnight? Bag when you go back to Rebecca's, Andrew advised as our meeting concluded. Once we file these papers and they're served on Ethan, things could get volatile. You might want to stay somewhere he wouldn't think to look for a few days. I nodded, the reality of my situation settling over me like a heavy cloak. I was preparing to go into hiding from my husband of 10 years, the man I'd built a life with, shared holidays with, planned a future with. How had we arrived at this point? Outside Andrew's office, as Emma and I walked to her rental car, a familiar voice called my name. I turned to see Daniel Porter, one of Ethan's colleagues from Westfield Financial, hurrying across the street, toward us. Olivia, thank goodness, he said, slightly out of breath. I've been trying to reach you. Emma moved protectively to my side. Now isn't a good time, Daniel. He ignored her, focusing intently on me. You need to know what's happening. Ethan and Richard are destroying documents, wiping servers. There's talk of relocating key operations to the Cayman Islands effective immediately. They're planning to blame the entire operation on a rogue IT specialist who committed suicide last year. The calculated cruelty of pinning their crimes on someone who couldn't defend himself shocked me, though perhaps it shouldn't have given what I'd already learned about Ethan's capacity for deception. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, echoing the question I'd posed to Natalie earlier. Daniel looked nervously over his shoulder. "Because I joined Westfield to manage legitimate investments, not to participate in fraud. And because my signature is on documents I now realize were part of their scheme." He lowered his voice further. "They're planning to leave the country this weekend. Private jet from a small airfield outside Riverside. Richard, Ethan, and the core team involved in what they're calling Project Clearwater." Emma exchanged glances with me, both of us recognizing the significance. Clearwater Beach, where Ethan had been house hunting for his new life with Natalie. "Thank you for this information," I said carefully. "Would you be willing to provide a formal statement?" Daniel hesitated, fear briefly clouding his features. "I have a family, a mortgage. If I come forward officially..." "You could also face charges if you don't," Emma pointed out, her legal mind calculating the angles. "Voluntary disclosure looks much better to prosecutors than being caught in the dragnet." He nodded slowly, coming to a decision. "I'll do it, but not here." He handed me a business card with a number scrawled on the back. "This is my personal cell. Have your lawyer contact me tonight, away from Westfield surveillance." As Daniel walked away, Emma was already dialing Andrew to share this critical development. The timetable had just accelerated dramatically. If Ethan and his conspirators were planning to flee the country in days, we couldn't afford to wait for standard legal proceedings. "Change of plans," Emma announced after speaking with Andrew. "We're meeting him back at his office in an hour with SEC enforcement." Daniel's information changes everything. I stood on the sidewalk outside the imposing office building that housed Andrew's law firm, watching Riverside's normal afternoon bustle continue around me. People rushing to meetings, couples enjoying late lunches at sidewalk cafes, a mail carrier, methodically working her route, all unaware that my world was imploding just feet away from them. A text notification broke my reverie. Another message from Ethan. "Olivia, please. Everything can be explained. Meet me at La Luna tonight at 8. Just hear me out." La Luna, where our anniversary dinner had been destroyed. La Luna, where he likely hoped the public setting would prevent any scene while he attempted to manipulate me as he had for months. La Luna, where he undoubtedly planned to convince me that what I'd discovered was all a misunderstanding, that our future together was still salvageable. I showed the message to Emma, who scoffed. "He's unbelievable." "Actually," I replied, a plan forming, "he's predictable, and that might be exactly what we need right now." Andrew Bennett's office had transformed into a command center by the time we returned. In addition to Jason Thompson, there were now two serious-looking individuals from the SEC's Enforcement Division, a forensic accountant with stacks of spreadsheets, and a court reporter documenting everything. "Ms. Mitchell," one of the SEC officials greeted me, extending her hand. "Samantha Reeves, Securities and Exchange Commission. We understand you've come into possession of evidence regarding potentially significant securities fraud at Westfield Financial Partners." I nodded, still processing the rapid escalation of events. "Yes, though that wasn't my initial concern when I discovered the information." Samantha's expression softened slightly. "We understand the circumstances are complicated, but your cooperation could be instrumental in preventing substantial financial harm to numerous investors." Andrew guided me to a chair at the conference table, where the flash drive's contents were being projected onto a large screen. The documents looked different now, annotated with highlighting and margin notes by the forensic team. "Based on our preliminary analysis," the forensic accountant explained, "Westfield has been operating a sophisticated investment scheme for approximately 3 years. They've diverted an estimated $47 million from client accounts. into offshore entities controlled primarily by Richard Coleman and Ethan Mitchell. The scale was staggering. I'd known Ethan was involved in something unethical, but the magnitude suggested this wasn't just opportunistic deception, it was calculated long-term fraud. What Mr. Porter told you about their plans to leave the country corroborates intelligence we've been developing, Samantha added. We've had Westfield under surveillance for several months, following irregularities flagged by our monitoring systems. Emma leaned forward. Why haven't you moved on them already if you've been investigating? Evidence, Samantha replied simply. We've seen the smoke, but couldn't locate the fire. The materials Ms. Mitchell provided offer the first concrete. Documentation of how the scheme operates, who's involved, and where the money has gone. Andrew cleared his throat. Which brings us to our immediate concern. If Ethan Mitchell and his associates are planning to flee this weekend, we need to secure Olivia's interests before they can move or hide additional assets. Samantha nodded. We're preparing to execute search warrants at Westfield offices tomorrow morning. In the meantime, we've already initiated freezes on the corporate accounts we've identified from your documents. And my personal situation? I asked, trying to keep the tremor from my voice. We'll file emergency motions with the family court today, Andrew assured me. But given this new information, I'm concerned about your meeting with Ethan tonight. I'd almost forgotten my impulsive response to Ethan's text, agreeing to meet him at La Luna at 8 o'clock. In the whirlwind of SEC involvement, what had initially seemed like a strategic opportunity now felt potentially dangerous. You should cancel, Emma insisted. It's too risky. But Samantha was considering, exchanging glances with her colleague. Actually, this could be extremely valuable. If Ms. Mitchell is willing, a recorded conversation with her husband might provide additional evidence, particularly regarding his intent to leave the country. Absolutely not, Emma protested. You're not using my sister as bait. It would be completely voluntary, Samantha clarified, and we would have agents nearby ensuring Ms. Mitchell's safety. All eyes turned to me, waiting for my decision. The thought of facing Ethan, of sitting across from him while pretending I didn't know the full extent of his betrayal, made my stomach clench. But something stronger was emerging through the hurt, a determination to reclaim some control in a situation where I'd been rendered powerless. I'll do it, I said, surprising even myself with the steadiness in my voice. But I need to know exactly what to say, what information to try to get from him. The next 2 hours were a crash course in evidence gathering. The SEC team fitted me with a discreet recording device, tested the audio quality, and coached me on specific questions that would elicit the most useful responses. We agreed that Emma and Rebecca would be at a nearby table, with SEC agents positioned throughout the restaurant and in vehicles outside. Remember, Samantha advised as our preparation concluded, you're not trying to confront him or expose what you know. The goal is to get him talking about his plans, specifically any mentions of leaving the country, transferring assets, or the Westfield investment structure. What if he asks about the flash drive? I questioned, having rehearsed various scenarios. Deflect, Andrew suggested. Express confusion, change the subject. The less he knows about your knowledge, the more likely he is to reveal something useful. As evening approached, I returned to Rebecca's apartment to prepare for what would undoubtedly be one of the most difficult performances of my life. Emma insisted on helping me choose an outfit. Something that says, I'm considering hearing you out, but not, I'm a pushover, she explained, settling on a charcoal gray dress that was elegant without being overly formal. Are you sure about this? Rebecca asked, as she helped me apply makeup to conceal the evidence of sleepless nights. No one would blame you for backing out. I met her concerned gaze in the mirror. I'm sure. For 10 years, Ethan has been making decisions that affected both our lives while keeping me in the dark. Tonight, I make my own decision. La Luna was busy when I arrived, the Thursday evening crowd creating a background hum of conversation that would help mask our discussion from nearby tables. I spotted Rebecca and Emma already seated in a corner location with clear sightlines to the table where Ethan and I had celebrated anniversaries, birthdays, promotions, milestones in a marriage I now understood had been built on quicksand. Recognized 2 SEC agents positioned at the bar, and Samantha had mentioned others would be stationed outside. The knowledge provided some comfort as I awaited Ethan's arrival, fighting the urge to fidget with the tiny microphone concealed beneath my necklace. When Ethan walked in precisely at 8, I was struck by how terrible he looked. The always impeccable financial advisor appeared haggard, with dark circles under his eyes and his normally perfect hair disheveled. He'd lost weight in just the eye. 2 days since our anniversary dinner, his custom suit hanging slightly loose on his frame. For a fleeting moment, I felt an unwelcome pang of sympathy. Then I remembered the ultrasound photos, the hidden financial documents, the elaborate plans for a new life that didn't include me, and that sympathy crystallized into resolve. Olivia, he breathed, relief evident in his voice as he approached the table. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I offered a non-committal smile, remembering Samantha's coaching not to reveal my emotions. You said you wanted to talk. He settled into the chair across from me, reaching for my hand across the table. I withdrew it smoothly, pretending to adjust my napkin. I've been so worried, he continued, either not noticing or choosing to ignore my subtle rejection. You weren't answering my calls, you didn't come home. I thought maybe you'd. Maybe I'd what, Ethan? I asked, maintaining an even tone despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I'd always found endearing in the past. I don't know. Done something drastic. Like crash someone's anniversary dinner with ultrasound photos? The words escaped before I could temper them. Ethan winced. What Natalie did was inexcusable. I had no idea she was planning that. I would never have wanted you to find out that way. How did you want me to find out? I asked, genuinely curious about what scenario he had envisioned for dismantling our marriage. The question seemed to catch him off guard. I hadn't figured that out yet. Things with Natalie, they weren't supposed to happen. It was a mistake. That got complicated. Marco, La Luna's owner, approached our table with menus, his usual warm greeting noticeably subdued. Word of what had happened during our anniversary dinner had clearly spread among the staff. Just water for now, I told him, not trusting my stomach with food during this conversation. The same, Ethan added, waiting until Marco had retreated before continuing. Olivia, I know you're hurt and angry. You have every right to be. But there are things you don't understand about the situation. I thought of the offshore accounts, the siphoned client funds, the plans for escape to Florida. Then help me understand, Ethan. What exactly am I missing? He leaned forward, lowering his voice. My position at Westfield is complicated. There are pressures, expectations you wouldn't believe. Richard relies on me to handle sensitive matters for our highest value clients. Like the Anderson portfolio? I asked innocently, naming one of the clients mentioned in the documents as having substantial funds diverted. A flash of something, concern, suspicion, crossed Ethan's face before he masked it. Among others. The point is, my relationship with Natalie. It wasn't planned. It happened during a difficult period when I was under enormous stress. And the baby? I prompted, steering the conversation back toward topics the SEC was interested in. That must have complicated things further. Ethan exhaled heavily. It changed everything. Suddenly there were more considerations, more arrangements that needed to be made. Arrangements? He hesitated, clearly weighing how much to reveal. Financial preparations primarily. A child changes your perspective on security, on planning for the future. I nodded encouragingly, as though this were a perfectly reasonable explanation for fraud and betrayal. And where did those preparations lead you? What's your plan now? The question was deliberate, open-ended enough to potentially elicit information about his intended departure, specific enough to be relevant to the investigation. That's what I wanted to discuss, Ethan said, seeming relieved that I appeared receptive. I've been offered an opportunity, a significant promotion within Westfield to head a new division. It would mean relocating, at least initially. Relocating where? I asked, maintaining a facade of mild interest. Florida, he replied, watching my reaction carefully. Clearwater Beach area. The position comes with substantial benefits: increased salary, equity participation, executive perks. It's the opportunity I've been working toward my entire career. The rehearsed quality of his explanation suggested he'd practiced this conversation, perhaps expecting me to be impressed or persuaded by the professional advancement angle. When would this move happen? I continued, recalling Daniel Porter's information about their imminent departure. Ethan shifted slightly, the first clear tell that he was lying. The timeline is still being finalized, probably within the next month or two, once the logistics are sorted out. Not this weekend, then. A deliberate omission. And where does this leave us, Ethan? I asked, forcing vulnerability into my voice. Where do I fit into these plans? His expression softened, mistaking my question for an opening. That's what we need to discuss. Obviously, things have changed with Natalie and the baby, but I still care about you, Olivia. I want to make this transition as smooth as possible for everyone involved. Smooth, I repeated, the word tasting bitter. You mean like a divorce? He nodded, looking almost relieved that I'd said it first. I think that would be the most straightforward approach. I've already consulted with an attorney about the process. Given our prenuptial agreement, it should be relatively uncomplicated. The prenup, he'd insisted, was just a formality, a requirement of his position at Westfield. The prenup that, according to Natalie, he'd structured specifically to minimize what I would receive. And what does this uncomplicated process look like from your perspective? I asked, curious to hear how he would frame the financial aspects. Ethan adopted his professional advisor tone, the one he used when explaining complex financial concepts to clients. The prenup addresses most of our assets: the house, investments, retirement accounts. You'd retain your business, of course, and I'm prepared to be generous regarding temporary support during the transition period. Generous, I echoed, fighting to keep sarcasm from my voice. And what about our joint accounts? I noticed some unusual activity recently. A flicker of alarm crossed his features before he composed himself. Just some routine transfers, nothing to be concerned about. $50,000 withdrawn yesterday doesn't seem routine to me. His jaw tightened. I had some pressing financial obligations to address. Business expenses that couldn't wait. Business expenses, I repeated. For Westfield? Or for your new venture in Florida? Ethan's eyes narrowed, the first sign that he was beginning to suspect I knew more than I was letting on. What exactly are you asking, Olivia? I backpedaled slightly, remembering my instructions not to reveal the extent of my knowledge. I'm just trying to understand where our money is going, Ethan. It seems reasonable given the circumstances. Of course, he replied, his expression clearing. I'm happy to provide a full accounting. In fact, I've already asked our financial advisor to prepare statements for the divorce proceedings. Our financial advisor, not Jason Thompson, whom Ethan had never met, but someone from Westfield who would undoubtedly present carefully sanitized records. Speaking of the divorce, I continued, how does Natalie feel about all this? About becoming a family so quickly? The question was calculated to probe his relationship with Natalie, potentially revealing inconsistencies in their stories. She understands the situation is complex, Ethan replied carefully. We're focused on creating stability for the baby. In Florida, I clarified. Away from Riverside. He nodded. A fresh start makes sense for everyone. New opportunities, new beginnings. When did you decide this? About Florida, about leaving? I pressed, seeking specific timeline information for the SEC. Ethan's expression became guarded. It's been in development for some time. Richard and I have been planning the expansion for nearly a year. A year. During which he'd maintained our marriage, discussed future plans with me, all while constructing an elaborate exit strategy. And the timing now, is it related to the Anderson account? I asked, deliberately dropping the name that had appeared prominently in the fraud documentation. Ethan went very still, his eyes suddenly sharp with suspicion. Why would you ask about Anderson specifically? I realized I'd pushed too far. You've mentioned them before, one of your important clients. I just wondered if their investments were part of this new division. He studied me for a long moment, calculation evident in his gaze. What exactly has Natalie told you, Olivia? The direct question caught me off guard. Before I could formulate a suitably vague response, Ethan's phone buzzed insistently on the table. He glanced down at the screen, and I watched genuine alarm transform his features. I need to take this, he said, already standing. Wait here, please. This will just take a minute. As he walked briskly toward the restaurant entrance, his phone pressed to his ear, I saw him gesture sharply, his body language betraying agitation. Outside La Luna's large front windows, I could see him pacing on the sidewalk, running his hand through his hair repeatedly as he spoke. Emma appeared at my table almost immediately. What happened? He looks panicked. I don't know, I admitted. We were talking about the Anderson account, and he got suspicious. Then his phone rang, and he practically ran outside. Samantha approached from her position at the bar, keeping her voice low. That call came from Richard Coleman. We're monitoring communications. They just received notification that several of their offshore accounts have been frozen by regulatory authorities. Is that your doing? I asked. Not directly, Samantha replied. But once we alerted certain international agencies about potential fraud, they initiated their own containment procedures. The timing is unfortunate for our purposes, but potentially beneficial for securing the assets. He's coming back, Emma warned, quickly retreating to her table. Ethan's composed facade had completely crumbled when he returned, his expression taut with barely controlled panic. I'm sorry, Olivia, but something urgent has come up at work. We'll need to continue this discussion another time. Is everything okay? I asked innocently. You look worried. He forced an unconvincing smile. Just a client situation that needs immediate attention. Nothing serious, but time-sensitive. He leaned down to brush a kiss against my cheek, whispering, Think about what I said about Florida. About a smooth transition. It would be better. For everyone. The implied threat wasn't subtle. As he straightened, his eyes met mine with an intensity that sent a chill through me. Some financial matters are more complicated than they appear, Olivia. It's always best to avoid unnecessary complications, don't you think? Before I could respond, he was gone, moving swiftly through the restaurant toward the exit. Through the window, I watched him break into a run once he reached the sidewalk, all pretense of composure abandoned. Samantha was immediately at my side, removing the recording device. We got enough. He confirmed the planned relocation, the timeline of preparation, and made reference to the Anderson account. Combined with the documentation you provided, it's sufficient for us to move forward. He knows something's wrong, I said, still watching through the window as Ethan's car pulled away from the curb, tires squealing. The account freezes tipped, him off. Which means we need to accelerate our timeline, Samantha replied, already signaling to her colleagues. Our team will execute the search warrants tonight instead of waiting until morning. We can't risk them destroying evidence. As the SEC agents moved efficiently around us, preparing to follow Ethan while others headed directly to Westfield's offices, I remained seated at the table where my husband had just essentially confirmed every suspicion and betrayal. "Are you okay?" Emma asked, sliding into the chair Ethan had vacated. I considered the question seriously. In the span of 3 days, I'd discovered my husband's infidelity, his financial crimes, and his plans to abandon me for a new life I knew nothing about. I'd gone from being Olivia Mitchell, happily married interior designer, to a woman wearing a wire to gather evidence against the man she'd loved for a decade. "No," I answered honestly. "I'm not okay, but I will be." Rebecca joined us, placing a supportive hand on my shoulder. "What happens now?" I watched as SEC vehicles pulled away from La Luna's curb, heading toward a confrontation that would likely make headlines by morning. "Now," I said with unexpected clarity, "we make sure Ethan can't hurt anyone else. Not me, not his clients, not even Natalie and their child." This wasn't the ending I'd envisioned for my marriage. But perhaps it was the beginning of something else. A reclamation of power, of truth, of the future I deserved. Ethan had spent years constructing elaborate deceptions. Tonight was the first step in dismantling them all, one revelation at a time. Sleep eluded me that night despite exhaustion weighing on every cell of my body. I lay awake in Rebecca's guest room, staring at the ceiling as moonlight filtered through the blinds, creating patterns that seemed to shift and morph like the truths in my life. Emma had insisted on sleeping on a makeshift bed on the floor beside me, her protective instincts in full force. "Anything?" she asked softly, hearing me shift position for the dozenth time. "Nothing from the SEC team yet," I replied, checking my silent phone once more. After leaving La Luna, Samantha had promised to update us once the search warrants were executed, but hours had passed without word. Emma propped herself up on one elbow. "No news is probably good news. It means they're still gathering evidence, building their case." A notification illuminated my screen. Not from Samantha, but a news alert from the Riverside Gazette. Police activity reported at Westfield Financial Partners. The accompanying photo showed officers carrying boxes from the downtown office building where Ethan had worked for the past 12 years. I handed the phone to Emma, who quickly scanned the brief article. "It's happening," she said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "They're not wasting any time." Another notification followed, this one a text from an unknown number. "Turn on Channel 7 News Now." Rebecca appeared in the doorway moments later, her expression tense. "You need to see this," she said, already turning toward the living room where the TV was mounted on the wall. The local news anchor looked unusually alert for the late hour. Her typical polished delivery tinged with excitement as she reported breaking news. "Authorities have descended on the offices of Westfield Financial Partners in what sources describe as a major securities fraud investigation. We're receiving reports that several high-ranking employees have been taken into custody, including founding partner Richard Coleman." The camera cut to footage of Richard being escorted from the Westfield building in handcuffs, his normally commanding presence diminished by the officers flanking him. The image was jarring. This man had dined in my home, had toasted our anniversaries, had pretended concern for my well-being while knowing Ethan planned to leave me with nothing. "No sign of Ethan," Emma noted, her eyes scanning the footage intently. As if responding to her observation, the anchor continued. "Sources tell us that authorities are currently searching for Westfield executive Ethan Mitchell, who was not present when federal agents arrived at the firm's headquarters. Mitchell is reportedly a person of interest in the investigation." My phone rang. Samantha Reeves from the SEC. "Ms. Mitchell, are you watching the news?" "Yes," I confirmed. "I see they didn't find Ethan at Westfield. We believe he went directly to your home after leaving the restaurant," Samantha explained. "By the time our agents arrived, he had already left, taking several items with him. We've issued a law enforcement alert and have agents stationed at airports, train stations, and the interstate highways leaving Riverside. The implications were clear. Ethan was running. "What about Natalie?" I asked, suddenly concerned for the pregnant woman who, despite everything, had ultimately tried to warn me. "We've sent officers to her residence," Samantha assured me. "But there's no sign of her either. We're considering the possibility they may be traveling together." After ending the call, I sank onto Rebecca's couch, trying to process this latest development. The situation had escalated beyond anything I could have imagined 3 days ago. My husband wasn't just a cheater or a financial criminal. He was now a fugitive. "Should we be worried?" Rebecca asked, voicing the concern evident on all our faces. "If Ethan's desperate enough to run..." Emma shook her head firmly. "That's why you're staying here, with us, and why those SEC agents are parked outside the building. He'd be a fool to come anywhere near you now." Despite her confidence, we all jumped when my phone rang again, this time displaying Ethan's number. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. "Don't answer it," Emma urged. "Let the authorities trace the call." But something told me this might be our only chance to understand what was happening. I pressed the speaker button, placing the phone on the coffee table between us. "Ethan," I said simply, keeping my voice neutral. "You did this." His voice was unrecognizable, raw with fury and something else I couldn't quite identify. Fear, perhaps. "You ruined everything. How could you, Olivia? After all we've built together." The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. "After all we've built? You were planning to leave me with nothing while you started a new life with your pregnant mistress. You stole from your clients. You lied to everyone. You don't understand what you've done," he continued, ignoring my response. "This isn't just about us anymore. There are powerful people involved, people who don't appreciate their business being exposed like this." A chill ran through me at the implied threat. Emma was already texting Samantha, likely alerting her to the ongoing call. "Where are you, Ethan?" I asked, trying to keep him talking. "The authorities are looking for you. Running will only make things worse." He gave a harsh laugh. "Worse? They're talking about 20 years, Olivia. 20 years in federal prison. My life is already over." "Then turn yourself in," I urged, suddenly concerned by the desperation in his voice. "Cooperate with the investigation. It will go better for you if you do." "It's too late for that." His voice had shifted from anger to resignation. "I just wanted you to know that I did love you in my way. You weren't supposed to get hurt in all this." The past tense wasn't lost on me. "Ethan, where's Natalie? Is she with you?" A long pause followed, broken only by what sounded like traffic in the background. "No," he finally answered. "She's gone her own way." Smart woman, smarter than I gave her credit for. Turns out she had her own exit strategy. "Come back to Riverside," I said, trying to sound calmer than I felt. "We can work through this together." "Always the optimist," Ethan replied, an echo of fondness briefly softening his tone. "That's what I loved about you. You always believed things would work out." "They still can, just not the way you planned." Another pause, longer this time. "I wanted to hate you for this, but I can't. It's my own fault, really. I never should have underestimated you." The call ended abruptly, leaving us staring at the phone as though it might explain the cryptic conversation. "That was weird," Rebecca said after a moment, almost like he was saying goodbye. Emma was already dialing Samantha. The call came from somewhere with traffic noise, she reported when the SEC agent answered. "He implied Natalie isn't with him, and he sounded resigned," I finished for her, like someone who's made a final decision. Within minutes, Samantha called back. We traced the call to a cell tower near the Clayton Bridge, she informed us, referring to the landmark that spanned the river, dividing Riverside. We've dispatched officers to the location. The Clayton Bridge was over 30 minutes from Rebecca's apartment, but no one suggested sleep now. We sat in tense silence, the TV news continuing to broadcast updates as more details emerged about the Westfield investigation. According to reporters, federal agents had seized computers, documents, and other evidence suggesting a fraud scheme potentially reaching into the hundreds of millions, far larger than the initial estimates. My phone rang once more near dawn. Samantha. Again, her voice carefully professional in a way that immediately put me on alert. "Ms. Mitchell, we've located your husband's vehicle," she said. "It was abandoned near the midpoint of the Clayton Bridge. Officers are currently conducting a search of the area and the water below." The implication hung in the air, unspoken but unmistakable. Emma took the phone from my suddenly numb fingers. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" she asked. Bluntly. "We have no confirmation of anything at this point," Samantha replied, her trained neutrality never wavering. "The investigation is ongoing. We'll update you when we have more information." After ending the call, Emma looked at me with concern. "Olivia? Talk to me." I shook my head, unable to form coherent thoughts. The possibility that Ethan might have jumped from the bridge was so far removed from anything I could have anticipated that my mind simply refused to process it. "He wouldn't," I finally managed. "Ethan is many things, but he's not. He wouldn't." Rebecca sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "We don't know anything for sure yet. Let's not jump to conclusions." But as the sun rose over Riverside, bringing with it more news crews to the bridge and police divers searching the waters below, the scenario became increasingly difficult to deny. Ethan's car had been found unlocked, his wallet and phone on the passenger seat. A handwritten note addressed to me had been discovered tucked in the sun visor. The police delivered it to Rebecca's apartment mid-morning, sealed in an evidence bag but cleared for me to read. My hands trembled as I unfolded the single sheet of Westfield letterhead. "Olivia," it began in Ethan's precise handwriting. "By the time you read this, I'll have made the only choice left to me. I won't spend decades in prison, won't subject myself or you to the public humiliation of a trial. What started as ambitious financial maneuvering evolved into something I couldn't control or escape." Richard pushed for more aggressive strategies. Clients demanded higher returns, and the hole kept getting deeper. Natalie wasn't planned, a complication that became the catalyst for everything unraveling. I convinced myself I could fix it all, protect everyone, but I was wrong. You deserved better than what I became. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused you. Perhaps this final act will at least provide some closure. The insurance policies are in the safe at home. They should help offset what I've taken from you. Goodbye. Ethan. I read the note twice, then handed it silently to Emma. The words felt hollow, self-serving even in what appeared to be his final communication. Even now, Ethan was framing himself as a victim of circumstances rather than the architect of his own downfall. Insurance policies, Emma noted, her legal mind focusing on the practical even in this surreal moment. He's referring to life insurance. Most have suicide exclusions, but they typically expire after 2 years of coverage. The clinical discussion of policy details felt surreal, disconnected from the reality that my husband might have taken his own life rather than face the consequences of his actions. I wanted to feel grief, shock, something appropriate to the situation, but all I could muster was a profound numbness. What happens now? I asked no one in particular. Samantha, who had arrived to deliver the note personally, replied with practiced compassion. The search continues. Without a recovery, this remains a missing persons case. Albeit with strong indications of suicide, the fraud investigation will proceed regardless. And Natalie? I found myself asking, still concerned. Despite everything about the pregnant woman who had exposed the whole situation. Still no contact, Samantha admitted. We've put out alerts, but there's no indication she was involved in Mr. Mitchell's apparent decision last night. As the day progressed, more details emerged from the Westfield investigation. 7 executives, including Richard Coleman, had been arrested. Client accounts were being audited, with preliminary findings suggesting systematic fraud dating back nearly 5 years. The financial media was calling it the Riverside Scheme, drawing unflattering comparisons to notorious financial frauds of the past. Through it all, I remained in a state of suspended emotion, going through the motions of cooperation with authorities while struggling to reconcile the Ethan I thought I knew with the man who had apparently chosen death over accountability. Late that afternoon, as I sat with Rebecca and Emma in her apartment living room, my phone rang with an unfamiliar local number. "Mrs. Mitchell?" an unfamiliar voice asked when I answered. "This is Dr. Patel from Riverside Memorial Hospital. I'm calling about Natalie Reynolds." My breath caught. "Is she all right?" "She's been admitted for premature labor," the doctor explained. "She's stable, but we're monitoring her closely. She's asked specifically to speak with you." Emma was already shaking her head in warning, but I found myself agreeing to come to the hospital. Whatever complications existed between Natalie and me, she was carrying an innocent child who would now likely grow up without a father. The maternity ward at Riverside Memorial was quiet when we arrived, the typical joy of new life subdued in the room where Natalie lay connected to monitors tracking both her vitals and those of her unborn son. She looked smaller somehow, vulnerable, in a way I hadn't seen before. "Thank you for coming," she said softly as I approached her bedside, Emma hovering protectively near the door. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I admitted, settling into the chair beside her. "It's been a complicated day." Natalie nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I heard about Ethan, about the bridge. I can't believe he would." She trailed off, one hand moving protectively to her stomach. "Neither can I," said truthfully. "But apparently there was a lot about Ethan I didn't know." "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "For everything, for my part in it, for how you found out. I thought I was in love with him, thought we were building something real. By the time I realized how deep the deception went, I was already pregnant and trapped." I studied her face, searching for signs of manipulation but finding only genuine distress. "The doctors said you're in premature labor?" She nodded again. "The stress of everything. They think it triggered contractions. They've given me medication to try to stop it, to give the baby more time to develop." Her eyes met mine, pleading for understanding. "I never wanted any of this, Olivia. I never wanted to hurt you." The monitor tracking the baby's heartbeat beeped steadily in the background, a poignant reminder of the innocent life caught in our tangled drama. Whatever my feelings toward Natalie, her child, Ethan's child, deserved nothing but compassion. "What will you do now?" I asked. "If Ethan is really gone?" She looked away, staring out the window at the fading daylight. "I don't know. My parents are in Arizona. They don't know about any of this yet. I have some savings, but with the Westfield scandal, my reputation in the financial industry is ruined." A nurse entered to check Natalie's vitals, breaking the moment of unexpected connection between us. As she worked, my phone buzzed with a text from Samantha. "Update on search. Please call when convenient." I stepped into the hallway, bracing myself for news that they had recovered Ethan's body from the river. Emma joined me, her expression tense as I dialed Samantha's number. "We've suspended the water search," Samantha informed me without preamble. "New information has come to light. Security camera footage from a gas station 10 miles south of the Clayton Bridge shows a man matching Ethan's description getting into a private vehicle approximately 2 hours after his car was abandoned on the bridge." I struggled to process this information. Are you saying he faked his suicide? It appears that way, Samantha confirmed. The vehicle was registered to a shell company we've linked to the Westfield scheme. We're pursuing several leads, but it seems Mr. Mitchell may have orchestrated an elaborate disappearance. The revelation should have shocked me, but somehow it fit perfectly with the pattern of deception that had characterized Ethan's life. Even his apparent suicide had been yet another calculated performance. Does Natalie know about this? I asked, glancing back toward her hospital room. We haven't informed Ms. Reynolds yet, Samantha replied. Is she in contact with you? I explained the situation with Natalie's hospitalization, watching Emma's expression shift from concern to suspicion. What convenient timing, Emma muttered after I ended the call with Samantha. Natalie goes into premature labor just as Ethan fakes his death and disappears? I don't buy it. I wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Was Natalie another victim of Ethan's manipulations, or had she been part of his escape plan all along? The Natalie who had crashed our anniversary dinner with ultrasound photos seemed capable of theatrical deception, but the vulnerable woman in the hospital bed appeared genuinely distressed. One thing was becoming increasingly clear. Ethan Mitchell, the man I had loved and trusted for 10 years, had never truly existed. He had been a carefully constructed facade, a performance designed to facilitate his ambitions and desires. And now, in what should have been his final act, he had delivered one last deception. I returned to Natalie's room, studying her with new awareness. Was her distress genuine? Were the premature contractions real or another performance in an elaborate escape plan? The police found footage of Ethan, I said without preamble, watching her reaction closely. He didn't jump from the bridge. He faked his suicide and disappeared. The color drained from Natalie's face, her hand clutching the hospital blanket. What? No, He wouldn't leave. Her voice broke, tears spilling down her cheeks as the monitor tracking her heartbeat registered a sudden acceleration. Either she was genuinely shocked, or she was an exceptional actress. As the machines around her began beeping in alarm, prompting a nurse to hurry into the room, I realized it didn't matter anymore. Whatever game Ethan was playing, whatever role Natalie had or hadn't played in it, my part in this drama was coming to an end. I hope your baby is healthy, I told her sincerely as the medical staff ushered us out of the room, and I hope you both find peace wherever that leads you. Outside the hospital, as the evening settled over Riverside and lights began illuminating the cityscape, I felt something shift within me, the first hint of liberation from the whirlwind of shock and betrayal that had consumed me since those ultrasound photos appeared at our anniversary dinner. Ethan had chosen his path, leaving destruction in his wake. Now it was time for me to choose mine, to reclaim the future he had nearly stolen from me. Whatever happened next, whether Ethan was eventually captured or remained a ghost, I would no longer allow him to define my story. The sun was setting over the river as we drove back to Rebecca's apartment, painting the Clayton Bridge in hues of gold and crimson. I stared at it, thinking of Ethan standing there in the dark, carefully arranging his final deception before slipping away into a new identity, a new life. He's gone, I said quietly, more to myself than to Emma beside me. Whether they find him or not, the Ethan I married is gone. Maybe he never existed at all. Emma reached across to squeeze my hand, her expression softening. But you're still here, stronger than he ever imagined, and with your whole life ahead of you. For the first time since those ultrasound photos had appeared at La Luna, I felt myself smile, a small, tentative expression, but genuine nonetheless. Ethan had planned an ending, but perhaps for me, this was actually a beginning. The Westfield financial scandal dominated Riverside's news cycle for weeks. Each day brought fresh headlines as the investigation uncovered more clients affected, more money siphoned, more elaborate mechanisms of fraud. The financial district buzzed with speculation about which executives would cut deals with prosecutors, which wealthy clients would initiate lawsuits, and most persistently, where Ethan Mitchell might be hiding. 30 days after Ethan's disappearance, I sat in Andrew Bennett's office reviewing the latest legal developments. The sleek conference room with its panoramic views of downtown Riverside had become a strangely familiar setting, a place where the abstract nightmare of my situation transformed into concrete legal strategies. The good news, Andrew explained, sliding a document across the polished mahogany table, is that the judge has granted our motion to freeze all known assets. Ethan won't be able to access any accounts we've identified, regardless of where he's being. And the bad news? I asked, having learned that with Andrew there was always a balanced assessment. He sighed, removing his glasses. Despite the SEC's best efforts, they still haven't located all the offshore accounts. Based on their financial forensics, there's at least $7 million unaccounted for. Money that was moved through a layered network of shell companies before disappearing entirely. Which means Ethan has resources, Emma concluded, having appointed herself my unofficial legal consultant despite Andrew's expertise. He could be anywhere, living comfortably while everyone else deals with the aftermath. Andrew nodded grimly. The authorities have expanded their search internationally. There are alerts at borders, coordination with Interpol, but the trail has gone cold. The gas station footage was their last confirmed sighting. I absorbed this information with a strange detachment. In the month since Ethan's staged suicide, I'd moved through phases of shock, anger, and grief, finally arriving at a peculiar acceptance. Whether Ethan was eventually found or remained permanently in the shadows, I needed to rebuild my life regardless. What about the divorce proceedings? I asked, focusing on the practical matters within my control. Can we move forward without him physically present? We've initiated service by publication, Andrew confirmed. After the required waiting period, we can proceed with a default judgment. Given the overwhelming evidence of his fraud and infidelity, plus his flight to avoid prosecution, the court will almost certainly rule in your favor on all counts. Emma leaned forward, ever the advocate. And the prenup? That garbage document? He tricked Olivia into signing? Andrew allowed himself a small smile. As anticipated, the court has invalidated it on multiple grounds. His failure to disclose assets, the evidence of coercion, the fundamental unfairness of the terms, any one of these would have been sufficient. Combined, they make the prenup worthless. This victory, while meaningful legally, felt hollow emotionally. The prenup's invalidation wouldn't recover the millions Ethan had hidden, wouldn't erase the public humiliation of his betrayal, wouldn't restore the life I'd thought. We were building together. There's one more development you should be aware of, Andrew added, his tone shifting. Natalie Reynolds has filed paternity and child support petitions against Ethan. I raised an eyebrow. She had the baby? Last week, a healthy boy, despite the premature labor scare. She's named Ethan as the father on the birth certificate. The news stirred complex emotions. This child, this innocent boy, would grow up with the legacy of Ethan's crimes and abandonment. Whatever my feelings toward Natalie, the baby deserved better. The petition presents a potential complication for your divorce settlement, Andrew continued. If granted, it could affect the distribution of any assets recovered from Ethan in the future. She's entitled to support for her son, I said, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. That child is Ethan's responsibility, regardless of our divorce. Emma studied me with a mixture of confusion and admiration. That's remarkably generous considering everything Natalie put you through. I shrugged, unable to fully articulate the evolution of my perspective. The baby didn't choose any of this, and frankly, I'm not convinced Natalie knew the full extent of Ethan's deceptions either. She may have been another victim of his manipulations. Andrew made a note in his file. I'll communicate your position to her attorney. It may help facilitate smoother negotiations if they know you're not opposing their basic claim." As we concluded the meeting and prepared to leave, Andrew mentioned one final item. "The FBI has requested another interview with you next week. They're still building their case against Richard Coleman and the other Westfield executives." "More questions about Ethan?" I asked, exhausted by the repetitive nature of these interviews. "Likely," Andrew confirmed. "They're particularly interested in any patterns or habits that might help them track his movements. Places he mentioned wanting to visit, languages he studied, contacts abroad, anything that might narrow their search parameters." I agreed to the interview, though I doubted I had anything useful to offer. The Ethan I'd known, or thought I'd known, had been a carefully crafted persona, revealing only what served his purposes. The real Ethan, the man capable of elaborate fraud and abandoning his unborn child, remained a stranger to me. Outside, Andrew's office. The late summer heat enveloped downtown Riverside like a heavy blanket. Emma suggested lunch at a nearby cafe, but I found myself wanting solitude. Time to process the latest developments without the well-intentioned support that had surrounded me constantly since that fateful anniversary dinner. "Actually, I think I'll head to the studio," I told her, referring to Riverside Design Group, which had become my sanctuary amid the chaos of my personal life. "We're finalizing the West Side Hotel installation this week, and I should check on progress." Emma looked concerned. "Are you sure? We could grab something quick and I could go with you." "I'm sure," I assured her with a genuine smile. "I appreciate everything you've done, but I can't keep hiding behind my protective big sister forever. Besides, you have your own life and clients in Seattle waiting for you." She'd extended her stay in Riverside far beyond her original plans, putting her own law practice on hold to support me through the initial crisis. While I was deeply grateful, we both knew it couldn't continue indefinitely. "My flight's not until tomorrow," she reminded me. "And I'm only a phone call away after that. Promise you'll reach out if anything changes? If you need me to come back?" I hugged her tightly, realizing how much I'd come to rely on her strength these past weeks. "I promise, but I think it's time I started standing on my own again." Riverside Design Group's offices occupied the entire top floor of a renovated textile factory in the Arts District, all exposed brick, industrial windows, and open workspaces filled with drawing tables, material samples, and mock-ups. I'd founded the company 7 years ago with just myself and Megan, building it into a team of 12 designers with projects throughout the region. As I stepped off the elevator, the familiar creative energy of the space enveloped me, a stark contrast to the sterile legal discussions that had consumed so much of my recent life. Designers were gathered around a large table reviewing fabric swatches. The 3D printer was humming in the corner, creating a scale model, and gentle jazz played from the overhead speakers. A normal workday continuing despite its founder's personal turmoil. Megan intercepted me before I reached my office, tablet in hand and concern evident on her face. "I wasn't expecting you today," she said, falling into step beside me. "Everything okay with the lawyers?" "As okay as it can be," I replied, grateful for her direct approach. In the aftermath of Ethan's deception, Megan's unflinching practicality had been an unexpected source of strength. "Any urgent fires here?" "Actually, yes," she admitted, swiping through notifications on her tablet. "The Hendersons are asking about changes to their lake house kitchen design. The West Side Hotel deadline got moved up a week, and..." She hesitated. "2 clients have requested reassignment to other designers." I stopped walking, turning to face her directly. "Because of Ethan?" She nodded apologetically. "They didn't say it explicitly, but the timing suggests they're concerned about possible financial implications of your situation." The reality stung, though it wasn't entirely unexpected. Riverside was a relatively small community, and the Westfield scandal had touched many prominent families. Some clients might worry that working with Ethan Mitchell's wife would reflect poorly on them, regardless of my innocence in his schemes. Who took over their projects? I asked, focusing on the practical rather than the painful. Julia handled the Richardsons, and I gave the Blackwell renovation to Thomas. They both stepped up immediately, no questions asked. Megan's expression softened. Everyone here is behind you, Olivia. The team understands this isn't your fault. I nodded, touched by the loyalty, but still concerned about the potential business impact. Riverside Design Group was more than just my career. It was my primary financial security now that the household assets were frozen pending legal proceedings. Let's call a team meeting, I decided. Everyone together, total transparency. They deserve to know where things stand and how the business might be affected. Within 15 minutes, the entire staff had gathered in our central workspace, coffee cups and design notebooks in hand, expressions ranging from curious to concerned. These people weren't just employees. They were creatives who had chosen to build their careers with me, who had trusted in my vision for the company. Thank you all for coming together on short notice, I began, perching on the edge of a drafting table rather than standing formally. As you know, my personal situation has been complicated lately. The Westfield scandal and Ethan's disappearance have created uncertainty not just for me, but potentially for our firm. Julia, our senior designer who had been with me almost from the beginning, spoke up. We've been worried about you, not the business. Your personal nightmare has been playing out in the newspapers for everyone to see. That's got to be excruciating. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group, warming me with their sincerity. I appreciate that more than I can express, I told them honestly. But as business owner, I need to be practical about potential impacts. We've already had 2 clients request reassignment, and there may be more who are hesitant to contract with us given the publicity. Thomas, our newest designer who had relocated from Chicago specifically to join our team, raised his hand. With all due respect, those clients are idiots. Your husband's actions have nothing to do with your design talent or this firm's reputation for excellence. More nods and murmurs of agreement followed his blunt assessment. Unfortunately, perception matters in our industry, I acknowledged. And I want to be completely transparent. There may be cash flow challenges ahead. The divorce proceedings have frozen joint assets, including some investment accounts that were our emergency reserves for the business. Megan stepped forward, tablet in hand. Which is why I took the liberty of preparing this, she said, projecting a spreadsheet onto the large screen we used for client presentations. A complete financial assessment of our current projects, pending contracts, and operational expenses for the next 6 months. I stared at the detailed analysis, momentarily speechless. While I'd been drowning in legal meetings and emotional turmoil, Megan had been quietly preparing a comprehensive business continuity plan. You did all this? I asked, scanning the meticulous projections. She shrugged, though I could see the hint of pride in her expression. I figured you had enough to worry about without adding business finances to the list. The bottom line is, we're solid. The Westside Hotel contract alone covers operating expenses through December, and we have 6 confirmed projects starting in the fall. Relief washed over me as I studied the numbers. Riverside Design Group, my creation, my passion, would survive this crisis intact, regardless of what happened with Ethan or the divorce proceedings. There's more, Megan continued, swiping to a new screen showing a simplified organizational chart. I've drafted a restructuring proposal that would streamline operations while you're dealing with legal matters. Julia would take point on client consultations, Thomas would oversee project execution, and I'd handle administrative and financial operations. The 3 of them exchanged glances, and I realized with a start that they had coordinated this proposal among themselves, creating a support system to ensure the business continued to thrive despite my personal challenges. We're not suggesting you step back, Julia clarified quickly. "Just that you have backup when you need to be in court or meeting with lawyers. The company is still yours. Your vision still guides everything we do." Emotion tightened my throat as I looked around at these people who had rallied around me without hesitation. In the midst of betrayal and public scandal, they had chosen to stand firm, to protect not just their own livelihoods, but the creative vision we shared. "I don't know what to say," I admitted, blinking back unexpected tears. "Except thank you. All of you." Thomas grinned, breaking the emotional tension. "Does that mean you approve the restructuring plan? Because I've already started planning how to rearrange the workspace for maximum efficiency." Laughter rippled through the group, and for the first time in weeks, I found myself truly smiling. Approved in principle, pending review of the details. And Thomas, touch my drafting table and you're fired. The meeting evolved into a collaborative brainstorming session, with team members offering suggestions for client retention strategies, marketing approaches that would subtly distance the firm from the Westfield scandal, and workflow adjustments to accommodate my unpredictable legal schedule. By late afternoon, what had begun as a crisis management discussion had transformed into an energizing strategic planning session. The team dispersed to their various workstations with renewed purpose, leaving me alone with Megan in the conference room. "I don't know how to thank you for this," I told her as we gathered the meeting notes, "for holding everything together while I've been falling apart." She dismissed my gratitude with a wave. "You built something special here, Olivia. Something worth protecting. And for what it's worth, none of us ever liked Ethan much anyway." The blunt admission startled a laugh from me. "What? Why didn't anyone say anything?" Megan shrugged, her expression unapologetic. "He was your husband. It wasn't our place. But he always talked down to the staff, made comments about how interior design was a cute hobby that you were lucky to make money from. Like your success was accidental rather than the result of incredible talent and hard work." Her words unlocked memories I'd somehow suppressed. Ethan referring to my clients as bored housewives playing with daddy's money, suggesting that my business success was a fortunate accident rather than the result of vision and determination. How had I missed these signals, these early indications of his fundamental lack of respect? "We're finishing up the West Side Hotel installation this weekend," Megan continued, changing the subject as if sensing my discomfort. "The reveal is scheduled for Monday morning. You should be there. It's your design that transformed that space." The West Side Hotel renovation had been my largest project to date, a complete reimagining of the historic property's public spaces. I'd won the contract against firms twice our size, and the successful completion would significantly raise Riverside Design Group's profile in the commercial sector. "I'll be there," I promised, newly determined to reclaim my professional identity, separate from the scandal surrounding my personal life. "And Megan? When this is all settled, we need to talk about making you a partner in the firm. You've more than earned it." Her expression of surprise quickly shifted to determination. "I'm going to hold you to that. And in the meantime, go home. Get some rest. We've got this covered." As I left the office that evening, the weight that had been crushing me for weeks felt marginally lighter. Ethan had betrayed me, had potentially destroyed our marriage and financial future, but he hadn't managed to destroy everything. My business, my creative vision, my professional relationships, these remained intact, perhaps even strengthened by the crisis. Walking to my car in the fading summer light, I passed La Luna restaurant, its patio filled with dining couples enjoying the pleasant evening. I paused, staring at the entrance where Natalie had appeared 6 weeks ago with those ultrasound photos, setting in motion the collapse of my carefully constructed life. If she hadn't exposed Ethan's infidelity in such a dramatic fashion, how long would his deceptions have continued? Would I have remained oblivious while he siphoned more client funds, prepared his escape to Florida, started his new family? The thought was sobering. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Dinner at my place tonight? Emma's last night in town." I typed a quick reply accepting the invitation, then slipped my phone back into my bag. As I turned to continue toward my car, movement near La Luna's entrance caught my attention. A familiar figure being escorted to a prime table on the patio. Richard Coleman, out on bail pending his trial, dining with his wife as if nothing had changed. As if he hadn't facilitated massive financial fraud. As if he hadn't known about and supported Ethan's plans to betray me. Our eyes met briefly across the distance. He faltered mid-step, then quickly looked away, guiding his wife to their table with a hand on her lower back. The picture of devoted husband, upstanding citizen, respectable businessman. I wondered if she knew the truth yet, if she'd discovered the extent of his deceptions, or if she remained as oblivious as I had been. The thought filled me not with satisfaction, but with an unexpected compassion. Soon enough, Richard's carefully constructed facade would crumble just as Ethan's had, leaving her to navigate the same bewildering landscape of betrayal and public humiliation. Turning away from the restaurant, I continued to my car with renewed resolve. Unlike Richard, unlike Ethan, I had nothing to hide, no elaborate deceptions to maintain. Moving forward would be painful, complicated, and at times overwhelming, but it would be authentic, a life rebuilt on truth rather than illusion. For the first time since those ultrasound photos had appeared at our anniversary dinner, I felt something close to gratitude toward Natalie Reynolds. In her desperate attempt to claim Ethan for herself, she had inadvertently freed me from a marriage built on lies. Whatever happened next, whether Ethan was found or remained forever a fugitive, I would no longer be living in the shadow of his deceptions. 5 years had passed since Ethan's sentencing, 5 years of rebuilding and renewal. I stood at the expansive windows of my downtown loft, morning light streaming across the hardwood floors and illuminating the architectural drawings spread across my design table. The riverside skyline had changed in subtle ways during this time. New buildings rising along the waterfront, the historic district undergoing careful revitalization, the city evolving just as I had. My phone chimed with a calendar reminder. Gallery opening, 7 p.m. Rebecca's art gallery was unveiling a new exhibition tonight featuring local artists, including several large-scale installations I'd helped conceptualize. The collaboration had been unexpectedly fulfilling, merging my interior design expertise with fine art in ways that stretched my creative boundaries. In the bathroom, I studied my reflection as I applied minimal makeup. At 45, I looked different than the woman who had raised that anniversary toast to Ethan years ago. More defined laugh lines around my eyes, a few strands of silver threaded through my hair that I chose not to color, and most noticeably, a confidence in my gaze that had been hard-won through adversity. My phone rang as I was selecting jewelry, Emma's name lighting up the screen. Despite having offices in the same downtown district, our schedules often meant connecting by phone between in-person visits. "Please tell me you're still coming tonight," I said in lieu of greeting. Emma laughed. "Hello to you too. Yes, I'll be there, though I might be a few minutes late. The Wilson custody case is running long." "Your famous 15 minutes," I teased, referring to her well-known habit of saying she'd be 15 minutes late, regardless of the actual time frame. "Speaking of the gallery opening," Emma continued, ignoring my gentle ribbing, "did Rebecca mention that the Riverside Tribune is sending someone to cover it? Apparently, the arts editor is making it a feature on local creative collaborations." I hadn't known, though the publicity would be excellent for both Rebecca's gallery and the participating artists. "Thanks for the warning. I'll make sure to wear something photogenic." "As if you own anything that isn't," Emma replied. "Oh, before I forget, did you see the email from Andrew Bennett this morning?" I hadn't checked my professional email, yet focused on finalizing the presentation boards for a new corporate client. "No, what's up?" Emma hesitated, her tone shifting. "The final distributions from the Westfield Victim Compensation Fund are being processed, as Ethan's ex-wife, you're eligible for a portion based on the marital assets that were seized. The news landed strangely, a sudden connection to a past I'd worked hard to move beyond. The Westfield scandal had gradually faded from public consciousness, becoming just another cautionary tale in financial circles rather than the defining narrative of my life. I thought all that was settled years ago, I said, vaguely recalling signing paperwork when the restitution plan was first established. The primary distributions were, Emma explained, slipping into her lawyer cadence. This is from additional assets that were recovered more recently. Apparently, they found another offshore account linked to Ethan last year. Andrew says it's substantial. I considered this unexpected development. Money that had once been part of my marital estate, funds Ethan had hidden away for his planned new life with Natalie, now potentially coming back to me. There was a certain poetic justice to it, though the prospect stirred complicated emotions. I'll look at Andrew's email, I promised. But honestly, I'm not sure I want it. Emma made a disparaging sound. Don't be ridiculous. It's not about wanting Ethan's money. It's about receiving what's rightfully yours after everything he put you through. Perhaps she was right. I'd long since achieved financial stability through my own efforts. Riverside Design Group had flourished, expanding to a team of 24 designers with projects throughout the region and growing national recognition. My personal finances were secure, my lifestyle comfortable though deliberately more modest than during my marriage. Any funds from the compensation distribution would be surplus rather than necessity. After ending the call with Emma, I browsed through my closet, selecting an outfit for the gallery opening. My style had evolved over the years, becoming more distinctively my own rather than conforming to what was expected of a successful professional's wife. Tonight called for something that straddled the line between artistic and professional. A structured jumpsuit in deep aubergine that I'd commissioned from a local designer, paired with architectural silver jewelry. At my desk, I finally opened my email to find Andrew Bennett's message. The attachment detailed the distribution formula for the newly recovered assets, with my portion estimated at just over $2 million, a significant sum that represented what would have been my share of the marital assets had Ethan not attempted to hide them. I stared at the figure, remembering a conversation with Natalie years ago when she had asked what I planned to do if authorities ever recovered the missing Westfield money. At the time, my answer had been hypothetical, a principle rather than a concrete plan. Now, with the reality before me, I found my original instinct unchanged. Opening a new email, I began drafting a response to Andrew, outlining my decision for the funds. Half would establish a scholarship program for students, pursuing careers in financial ethics and accountability. The remaining portion would create a foundation supporting women rebuilding their lives after economic abuse and financial betrayal, providing resources I'd been fortunate enough to have through my business and support network. But that many women lacked. Satisfied with my decision, I sent the email and returned to preparing for the day ahead. Riverside Design Group had a major client presentation this afternoon before the gallery opening tonight, a proposed renovation of the city's main library, a project I'd pursued passionately as both a professional opportunity and a contribution to the community. The morning sun climbed higher, illuminating the framed magazine covers displayed along one wall of my loft. Architectural Digest, featuring our renovation of the historic West Side Hotel. Interior design highlighting our work on a sustainable corporate campus. Regional home showcasing a modern riverside residence we'd designed. Tangible evidence of the success I'd built in the aftermath of betrayal. My phone chimed with a text from Megan. Models arrived for the library presentation. Everything set up. Coffee? I smiled at her efficient brevity. Our partnership had strengthened over the years, her pragmatic approach perfectly complementing my creative vision. Texting back a coffee order, I gathered my portfolio and prepared to leave. Downtown Riverside hummed with midday energy as I walked the 6 blocks to our office, now occupying 3 floors of a beautifully restored building in the Arts District. The expanded space accommodated our growing team while providing dedicated areas for material libraries, 3D printing, client presentations, and collaborative design. Megan met me at the entrance, coffee in hand. "The library board members are already here," she murmured as we walked toward the conference room, including Walter Prescott. Walter's presence was unexpected, but not surprising. After the success of his hotel projects, he'd been appointed to several civic boards, including the libraries. His continued support of my work over the years had evolved from professional respect to genuine friendship. The presentation unfolded smoothly, our vision for transforming the dated municipal building into a modern community hub clearly resonating with the board. The proposed design preserved the library's historic elements while creating flexible spaces for contemporary uses, collaborative work areas, technology centers, community meeting rooms, and inviting reading nooks. "You've outdone yourself, Olivia," Walter commented as board members examined detailed models after the formal presentation. "This captures exactly what we hoped for, honoring the building's heritage while making it relevant for today's needs." "That's always the balance, isn't it?" I replied, watching as other board members studied material samples and digital renderings, preserving what matters from the past while building something better for the future. Walter's knowing smile acknowledged the broader application of my observation. Over the years, he'd become one of the few people with whom I occasionally referenced the Westfield chapter of my life, perhaps because his own experience with betrayal gave him unique insight. "Speaking of building better things," he said, lowering his voice, "I heard about the compensation distribution. Emma mentioned it when we passed in the courthouse yesterday." Of course she had. Emma's protective instincts still manifested in keeping my informal support network informed of anything that might affect me, despite my having demonstrated resilience many times over. "I've already decided what to do with it," I assured him. "It's going to good use, just not my personal use." Walter nodded approvingly. "I expected nothing less, though no one would blame you for taking a luxury vacation or buying something frivolous after everything you've been through." The comment made me smile. Maybe I'll allocate a small portion for that purpose, but honestly, I have everything I need. It was true. The journey from that devastating anniversary dinner to now had stripped away pretenses and unnecessary complications, leaving me with a clearer understanding of what truly mattered. Meaningful work, authentic relationships, creative fulfillment, and inner peace. These were treasures Ethan's betrayal couldn't touch, foundations too solid to be shaken by deception. After the presentation concluded with the library board unanimously approving our concept, I returned to my office to find a courier envelope on my desk. Inside was a medium-sized package wrapped in simple brown paper, with a Portland return address I recognized immediately. Unwrapping it carefully, I found a children's book titled The Brave Little Bird, beautifully illustrated and inscribed on the inside cover. "To Olivia, Leo's first published book. I was the writer, but he did all the artwork. Not bad for a kindergartner. Thought you might like to have a copy. Your foundation helped make this possible. With gratitude, Natalie." The pages revealed a charming story of a bird finding its way after a storm destroyed its nest, with remarkably expressive illustrations clearly drawn by a child's hand but showing genuine artistic talent. The foundation Natalie referenced was the one I'd established with a portion of my divorce settlement years ago, providing educational grants and business startup funding for single parents rebuilding after relationship trauma. I hadn't known Natalie had applied for or received support from the foundation, which was administered independently to avoid conflicts of interest. The knowledge that the funding had helped her establish a career as a children's book author while nurturing her son's creative talents felt like a fitting completion of a circle that had begun with such pain. Placing the book on my shelf, I prepared for the evening's gallery opening. The day's events had stirred memories and connections to the past, but without the sting they once carried. More like turning pages in a book I'd already read, acknowledging the story while no longer being defined by it. The gallery was already buzzing with attendees when I arrived that evening. Rebecca had transformed the former warehouse space into a premier art venue, its industrial bones providing the perfect backdrop for contemporary works. Tonight's exhibition, titled Intersections, featured collaborations between different artistic disciplines: architecture and sculpture, design and painting, fashion and photography. "There you are," Rebecca called, elegant in a black sheath dress as she navigated through clusters of guests toward me. "The Tribune reporter has been asking for you. They want photos of us with the installation pieces." She guided me toward the journalist, making introductions with practiced ease. The young reporter seemed genuinely interested in our collaborative process, asking thoughtful questions about how interior design principles informed artistic installations and vice versa. "Your design background gives you a unique perspective on spatial art," she observed as we walked through the exhibition. "Has that cross-disciplinary approach always been part of your creative process?" The question prompted reflection. "It's evolved significantly over time," I admitted. "Early in my career, I was more focused on traditional interior design parameters. Life experiences pushed me to explore beyond those boundaries, to question established patterns and find new creative pathways." "Life experiences?" she echoed, clearly detecting a deeper story. I smiled, offering the simplified version I'd perfected over years of occasional media interactions. "Let's just say I learned firsthand that sometimes dismantling what doesn't work anymore is the first step to building something better." The reporter seemed to accept this philosophical response, moving on to questions about specific pieces in the exhibition. As we continued the tour, I spotted Emma arriving in characteristic style, rushing in with apologetic waves while somehow still managing to look perfectly put together. "Only 20 minutes late," I teased when she joined us after the interview. Concluded. A new record. "The Wilson case reached settlement," she explained, accepting a glass of wine from a passing server. "Good outcome for the client, which called for a little celebration before heading here." Emma's law practice had flourished, specializing in complex divorce cases where significant assets or business interests were involved. Her experience with my situation had shaped her professional focus, giving her unique insight into the intertwined, emotional and financial aspects of marital dissolution. "Did you see the Tribune is here?" she asked, scanning the crowd with practiced awareness. "Looks like a good turnout." "The mayor just arrived," Rebecca added, rejoining us after greeting other guests. "And the university president. Your collaborative pieces are drawing a lot of attention, Olivia." As the evening progressed, I circulated through the gallery, discussing artistic concepts with attendees, reconnecting with local business leaders, and enjoying the vibrant creative energy that had become such an important part of my life. The collaborative installations represented months of work with talented artists, translating spatial design principles into three-dimensional artistic expressions. Near the evenings, and Walter Prescott appeared at my elbow, champagne in hand. "Magnificent show," he commented, gesturing to the crowded gallery. "Rebecca must be thrilled with the turnout." "It's exceeded expectations," I agreed, though she always seems to know exactly what will resonate with Riverside's art patrons. Walter nodded thoughtfully. "Speaking of knowing what resonates, the library board unanimously approved your design proposal. Contract documents should arrive at your office tomorrow." The news was welcome, but not surprising given the enthusiastic response to our presentation. Still, securing the project represented another significant milestone for Riverside Design Group, our first major municipal commission, and an opportunity to create a space that would serve the entire community. "That's wonderful," I replied. "We're excited to move forward." They especially appreciated your suggestion to incorporate a financial literacy center within the library, Walter added. Given this city's history, it seemed particularly appropriate. The reference to the Westfield scandal was subtle but clear. 5 years later, Riverside was still recovering from the financial damage inflicted on so many prominent families and businesses. The Literacy Center had been my quiet acknowledgement of that communal wound, an attempt to ensure future generations would be better equipped to recognize financial deception. As the gallery event concluded and guests began departing, Emma, Rebecca, and I found ourselves in a quiet corner, the 3 friends who had formed my core support system through the darkest period of my life, now simply integral parts of my everyday joy. "Successful night," Rebecca declared, surveying her gallery with satisfaction. "Sales exceeded projections, and the Tribune coverage should drive more visitors through the exhibition run. Plus, Olivia landed the library contract," Emma added, having overheard my conversation with Walter. "We should celebrate properly. Dinner at the new place on Riverside Drive tomorrow?" We made plans for the following evening, our casual efficiency born of years of friendship and shared experiences. As we prepared to leave, Rebecca paused, her expression turning reflective. "Do you realize it's been almost exactly 5 years? Since Ethan's sentencing? 5 years since you officially closed that chapter?" I hadn't tracked the anniversary, having long since stopped measuring my life against the timeline of that betrayal. "I suppose you're right," I acknowledged. "Honestly, I hadn't thought about it." Emma's smile was knowing. "That's perhaps the most significant victory of all, that you no longer count time from that point." Stepping out of the gallery into the cool spring evening, I took a moment to appreciate the transformed riverfront district. Historic buildings repurposed for modern uses, new construction harmonizing with traditional architecture, the waterfront promenade illuminated by artful lighting. Riverside had evolved during these 5 years, healing from financial scandal while preserving its essential character, much as I had done personally. Walking toward my loft, I passed La Luna Restaurant, its patio filled with diners enjoying the pleasant evening. Unlike years ago, I felt no hesitation as I glanced through its windows. I'd reclaimed that space long since, occasionally dining there for business meetings or with friends. The painful memories of that anniversary dinner faded to historical footnotes rather than active wounds. Marco waved from inside, gesturing, to indicate he'd call me tomorrow, likely about the private dining room renovation his restaurant was planning, a project Riverside Design Group had recently been contracted to design. Our professional relationship had eventually evolved into a comfortable friendship, another example of reclaiming positive connections from the wreckage of betrayal. In my loft, I kicked off my shoes and opened the balcony doors, letting the spring breeze flow through the space. The home I'd created here reflected everything I'd learned about myself in the aftermath of Ethan's betrayal. It was elegant but unfussy, beautiful but functional, carefully curated but comfortable. Most importantly, it was entirely mine, designed to support my authentic life rather than project an image for others. On my desk sat the morning's email from Andrew, detailing the compensation distribution that would soon fund new opportunities for women rebuilding after experiences similar to mine. Beside it, Leo's illustrated children's book represented an unexpected positive outcome from a situation that had once seemed entirely tragic. Even Ethan's betrayal, it seemed, had ultimately contributed to creating ripples of good that extended far beyond my personal healing. My phone chimed with a final text from Emma. "Proud of you tonight, always." 3 simple words that acknowledged the journey without dwelling on its painful origins. From devastating betrayal at an anniversary dinner to the fulfilling life I now lived, professional success, meaningful friendships, creative exploration, and inner peace. The path had been neither straight nor easy, but standing in my loft, surrounded by evidence of all I'd built from the ashes of deception, I felt profound gratitude for the strength I'd discovered within myself. for the authentic life that had emerged from necessary destruction. Somewhere in the federal prison system, Ethan Mitchell continued serving his sentence, his grand schemes reduced to an inmate number and regulated visitation hours. The man I'd once believed he was had never existed except in my imagination, and his careful performance. The real Ethan, the one capable of profound deception and betrayal, remained a stranger to me and would always be so. But the woman who had emerged from his betrayal, she was someone I knew intimately and had come to deeply respect. She was resilient without being hardened, successful without being driven by others' expectations, wise without being cynical. She had learned to trust again, not blindly but carefully, to build meaningful connections while maintaining healthy boundaries. She was me, in my most authentic form, revealed not despite Ethan's betrayal, but because of it, like a sculpture, emerging as extraneous material is stripped away. The ultrasound photos Natalie had dramatically delivered to our anniversary dinner had indeed changed everything, but in ways neither woman could have anticipated. They had set in motion not just the end of a marriage built on illusion, but the beginning of a life grounded in truth. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.